What is up, guys? Today we'll be comparing the Samsung Galaxy S10e to the LG G8. So these are two pretty interesting phones to choose from here. So with the S10e, the price is around 200 bucks for a renewed one, and then it's the same story for the G8. You can pick up one for 200 bucks for a renewed one, and I think brand new, these are still going for around 400 bucks. Well, actually, the G8 has come down in price to 300 bucks, so that's pretty good. So you can find a new G8 cheaper than you can find an S10e. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it here. And I want to start off with hardware because I guess these two phones are kind of compact phones. So that's also something that I really love about both of these phones. And obviously the S10e is much smaller than the G8. Well, I'm not going to say much, but it is significantly smaller, and it's a bit lighter as well. So you do have on the G8 a premium design here. It's a glass and metal design. IP68 dust and water resistant. We got our physical fingerprint scanner right here, power button, volume rockers, Google Assistant button, 3.5mm headphone jack with the quad DAC, which we will talk about. And then you have technically stereo speakers on here and USB type C. On the S10e here, it's the same story, glass and metal design. It is IP68 dust and water resistant. On here, your fingerprint scanner is actually in the power button instead of on the back, which I think I prefer that position. And you also have your volume rockers, and then you have Samsung's Bixby button, which I honestly don't use. You do have headphone jack, USB-C, and this phone has stereo speakers as well. Now, I want to start talking about the display here because the displays on both of these phones are good, but it really comes down to personal preference, honestly. So on the S10e, you have a 5.8-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's HDR10+. It's 1080p 438 for the PPI. On the G8, you have a POLED HDR10 display at 6.1 inches, so it's slightly bigger than the S10e, as you can see. And then it's a 1440p display, so it's not a 1080p, it's 1440p, so it's much sharper, and then 564 for the PPI. So overall, the G8 does have a much sharper looking panel when you get up close. It just looks really sharp. But one thing that you'll notice here is that with the G8, you have a much bigger notch as opposed to the punch hole on the S10e. So that could be a concern for you depending on how you want to choose from these two displays. Me personally, I really like the punch hole, but I also like the 1440p. I would personally go with the 1440p, but I know a lot of people that will easily just go with the punch hole display because you don't want that intrusion, you know, when you're watching videos or playing games or whatever like this. So you don't want to see that, you know, big, you know, notch on there. So some people just don't like the notch. Some people prefer the punch hole. It's definitely up to you which one you prefer, but what you're choosing from between displays, you're choosing 1440p versus 1080p, you're choosing punch hole versus notch, and you have to decide which one you care about more. Also, the S10e is a little bit more compact for people with smaller hands, so it's easier to reach. The G8 is also compact, but it's just not as small as the S10e at 6.1 inches. So I think the display matchup is pretty interesting, and it really comes down to personal preference. I can't honestly tell you which one to go for here. Now I want to talk about software because this is also something to pay attention to. So the G8 is on Android's or LG's update list to be getting future updates for the next 2 to 3 years. The S10e has been getting frequent updates a lot. I think I have an update. I have an update ready to go right now. This phone gets updated a lot, and that update came out July 16th. So the S10e gets a ton of updates. Samsung updates their phones constantly. So that is something to consider. We know LG is leaving the marketplace, and you know you have that window for these last couple of phones that they released. So that is something to think about if you're into software. You know, obviously the S10e is going to have better software support, official software, and also if you want to go, you know, the rooting route as well. So I do want to talk about features, so let's open up the toggle, see what we got here. I believe the S10e actually has a bit more features than the G8. So on the S10e, you do have reverse wireless charging on here. So if I wanted to charge the G8, you can see, boom, I can wirelessly charge it from the S10e. That's something that you don't have on the G8. Also, you have screen recording on both of these phones as well. DTS surround sound, your quad DAC is on the G8, which that's something that the S10e does not have. Secure folders is on the S10e as well. And what else do we have? Screen sharing is on the G8, but you also have Samsung desktop support as well, which are really awesome feature too. So it really comes down to what you're looking for. Do you want the quad DAC experience, or do you want Samsung desktop support, reverse wireless charging? That is also something that you need to think about. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about these specs. On the S10e, you're running the Snapdragon 855, Adreno 640, micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. On the G8, you're also running Android 10 on here, the Snapdragon 855, Adreno 640, micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. So they're pretty much tied in storage, the S10e is running Android 11, but as you can see, we get a better score on the G8 as far as the multi-core score goes, and then the S10e beats it in the single core. But you guys know I like to sort of run real tests to see how they actually perform. So let's go ahead and check that out. See here, YouTube, S10e. Let's try Temple Run. It's pretty much a tie, it looks like. Yeah, that was a tie. So you can see these phones are pretty much tied in terms of speed here. Let's try one more here. Let's try Subway Surf. And the G8 actually got in there first. Try Google. What are the NBA standings? S10e. So it's kind of going back and forth here. So as speed wise, they're both pretty much the same speed. Now also the question about gaming performance, both of these phones basically play games the same. They both have the same chip, so they're going to be able to play games like PUBG, Call of Duty, Fortnite. You're going to be able to play these games on high settings, most of them, and you should not have any issue. I have a full gaming test on both of these phones, so please do check that out on the channel. Just type in Matthews Tech and just type in the phone, and you'll pull that up. So these phones do an excellent job with gaming. Now I want to talk about some additional features. So of course both of these phones have NFC, and both of these phones have a physical fingerprint scanner and face unlock, and the G8 does have superior face unlock. It's much better, but I do prefer the physical fingerprint scanner on the G8 just built into the power button. I think it just works really well, and it just seems really smooth. On the G8, it also works really well too, but I just don't like it as much as being on the back as on the side here. And then, like I said, face unlock is fast on both, but it's more secure on the G8 as well. Now let's talk about image quality. So on the S10e, you have a dual camera setup, and you have the same dual camera setup on the G8. But starting with the S10e, it's a 12 megapixel standard, and it's also a 16 megapixel ultra wide on here as well. You have 4K video at 60 FPS, and then a 10 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K. The S10e has beautiful photos. It still takes great photos for an older flagship phone. You get really good colors on here. Samsung has done a lot to update the image processing on this phone from when it first came out. So colors, dynamic range, the ultra wide looks great. Yes, sometimes it can oversaturate greens and stuff like that. But overall, it just takes awesome photos. So I think it still takes excellent quality photos. And it does a decent job in lower light situations. Not the best, but it does do a decent job. So I think for image quality, the S10e is definitely still an awesome phone. And it's the same thing for the G8. You have a 12 megapixel standard along with a 16 megapixel ultra wide. And you also get an 8 megapixel selfie, and it shoots in 4K on the back and 1080p on the front. So the S10e does have it beat as far as video resolution for the selfie cam. But one of the things I like about the G8's cameras over the S10e is I think you get more natural looking colors. Like I said, the G8 does not have that problem with oversaturation and making things like extremely green or extremely red or something like that. But yeah, so overall, I think I would still choose the S10e over the G8's cameras if you don't care about like natural color. Yeah, I would choose the S10e. I just like how like the photos come out a little bit more sharper, a little bit more vibrant looking. But again, like I said, it really comes down to color because they're both taking pretty much the same type of photos here. So I don't see a massive difference. It really comes down to like the color sign of both phones. Excuse me. So yeah, so excellent cameras on both. Alright, so I got the speakers maxed out. Let's go ahead and hear the speaker quality starting with the S10e. So they both have the same loudness, so they're both pretty much equal in terms of volume. I would still go with the S10e. I think the speakers are clear. What LG did here with the G8 is that they went with a speaker under the glass on the G8. So it just doesn't sound as clear as the speaker, the obvious physical showing speaker on the S10e. So you're just not gonna have as good speaker quality. Now the G8 still sounds great for what it is, but I wasn't crazy about the under the display speaker when it first came out, but they do both sound great, but I would still give speaker quality to the S10e here. Alright, so you will have much better battery life on the G8. You have a bigger 3,500 milliamp battery, 21 watt charging with wireless charging. On the S10e, you have a 3,100 milliamp battery with a slower 15 watt charging, but you do get that reverse charging on the S10e, the reverse wireless charging. And then you have your wireless charging, of course, at 15 watts. So as far as screen on time, you will get better screen on time on the G8 here. So if you're choosing between these two phones and battery life is really important, I will go with the G8 here. So what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.